Hello and happy Friday. I'm Karl Latham and welcome to today's Friday Fundamental. I am a professional drummer in the New York City area. I am a member of the Percussive Arts Society Education Committee and I teach at 3 colleges in the area, Drew University, the County College of Morris, and Raritan Valley Community College. I also teach at a private high school called Blair Academy. This particular video I crowdsourced with the help of other PAS Education Committee members, and what we decided would be best to present today are some real basics. These are going to be just really basic considerations for band directors, for non-drumming percussionists, and for beginning drummers. There are so many different choices here, heads, pedals, cymbals, sticks, etc. I just want to kind of break it down and show you what these choices are about. And then later in the video, I'm going to present some basic concepts for jazz drumming and some basic concepts and techniques for rock drumming and also some hand and foot technique. So let me get started right away with, this is a drum set. This particular drum set is my bebop drum set. There's an 18-inch bass drum, a 12-inch tom-tom, and a 14-inch floor tom-tom. And I have a standard snare drum. I have a ride cymbal I use for playing bebop. I have another ride cymbal, and I have a crash cymbal which I also can ride on. When I'm going to think about the setup of the drum set, I am going to have myself in a position where I'm squared off with the bass drum. I kind of like to have both of my feet so that they're really relaxed. I can have my pedals. They're equally distributed. My height is in a situation where my weight is distributed evenly between my body and my feet, so I'm not using my legs just to sit here. When I'm going to place the instruments, I'm going to place them as ergonomically correct as I can. For the type of music that I play often with like John Lee or I sub on the Dizzy Gillespie bands, I'm playing pretty intensely at a very low volume. So I don't want to swing my arms around a lot. So what I want to do is I want to have my drums as close as I can and my cymbals so I can reach them and they're right out in front of me. I don't have to work just to get to the instrument. I can reach all these drums, I can reach the bell, no problem. And all these setups will be different depending upon your size, your height, your length, your torso length, your leg length, your arm length, okay? So let's jump into more about the drum set. I know something that can be interesting to non-drummers is the clutch. I personally always have 2 of these with me at all times. If you don't have your clutch, it's very challenging to play a hi-hat the way you might want to. The clutch, which has 2 pieces like this and felts, this is used to hold the top cymbal, the hi-hat, the lighter cymbal, the heavier cymbal typically goes on the bottom, so that it can move up and down on this rod. This is a great clutch because I also can lock it in to the amount of play that I want to have in this top cymbal. Some people have their top cymbal pretty tight. Some people have it pretty loose so it moves around. I kind of go somewhere in the middle. So as you can see, there's a little bit of play in that cymbal. And that sometimes will help me to not have it airlock while I'm playing it. Okay? You're going to play this instrument with your foot. You're going to play this instrument with your other foot. When we get to the bass drum, you're going to use a pedal, just like you use in the hi-hat. This is a very basic bass drum pedal. This is probably close to the design of like a Gretsch floating action that I played as a kid. You have your spring tension here, which tensions how the fast beater is going to be coming back and forth. This adjustment here adjusts the throw. If I took my drum key and I loosened this up, I can move this forward, I can move it back, and that's the throw. And this adjustment here is the adjustment for how long is the shaft of the beater length going to be. What that will be in relationship to your bass drum size. For this 18-inch, I want to try to get it right in the middle, same I would do with a 20. So I would move it in and out depending on the bass drum size. This is a different type of bass drum pedal. And why I wanted to show you this right away, this pedal has a completely different type of beater. This I usually don't use when I'm playing a lot of bebop, but I use it when I want to have a lot of impact, and this pedal is particularly fast. Here are other beater choices. Here is a soft beater. This is a really diffuse attack. This has a pretty pronounced attack. That's a felt. So when we're talking about that, we'll talk about sticks. All of these things all these considerations have a impact on the sound you're going to create. If I only could choose one type of drum head on my drum set, I would have a coated head. I have it coated on top on the snare. Why do I want to have a coated head on the snare? So I can play a brush. I don't want a clear head on my snare. I want at least like a frosted head. This is a coated head. On this particular kit, I use coated heads all the way around, even on the bass drum, to produce the sound I want. On other drum sets that I have, I employ other heads. I often employ a clear head on the bottom of my tom-toms. These drums actually do have a clear head on the bottom. And I use a clear head on top sometimes. It gives me a really bright, snappy sound. This is a frosted head. It has a control sort of device in it. And I'll show you right away. Here is a coated head, which I have tuned pretty high. And this is a frosted head. These are exactly the same drum that I'm using for different applications. As you can hear, I'm getting a completely different sound out of those drums. So next, on to stick size and tip. A 5A or a 5B is a very standard stick size. When I play jazz, I typically use a 5A. I use an acorn tip. Sometimes I go as small as a 7A if I want to play really light. This is a 5A here. Is this a 5B? Yes, this is a 5B. I use this often when I'm playing rock and funk and music like that. You can hear it. It's same type of stick, but a little wider. It creates a different sound. When I'm really going for it, I typically use a heavier stick even, and this has an oval tip on it. And listen to the difference between if I play a 5A on this cymbal and I play this on the cymbal. It sounds like a different cymbal. Just kind of the oval has more contact. It makes a completely different sound. So, another consideration in the drum set is they don't sound this way out of the box. These drums sound great out of the box, but they don't sound like that. If I want to control the sound a little bit, instead of using tape, maybe I'll grab a gel and I'll throw a gel on the head. That'll quickly change the sound of the drum. Oh, I want less ring. If I'm recording, oftentimes I'll put these on the bottom head, especially if I have my tom-toms are mounted on the bass drum. Every time I hit the bass drum, the tom-toms will ring. Completely different. Another muting device I use, you can use a blanket, you can use a pillow, or all different ways companies make. This is a product by Evans, which you put inside the ported hole, and immediately I can have control over the bass drum sound. Typically, if I'm playing rock or funk, I use a clear head, often a 2-ply head. I like that. Many manufacturers have heads where they have control rings, Remo, Evans, where there's a little bit of control on the head surface itself. So those are some basics. I'm going to come back in a minute and show you some basics on how to play the bass drum, how to play the hi-hat, and how to the basic jazz ride cymbal beat, and some little coordination exercises. And now I'd like to really briefly introduce you to the drum set again and talk about some feet technique. There are two primary ways that you can think about playing the bass drum pedal. Oftentimes we break that up into heel down and heel up. So generally when I want to play in a quieter situation, I'll play with my heel down. I can generate less volume that way. I can get strong, but I can also play very quietly. If I want to generate a lot of volume, I usually play with my toe with heel up. So a couple of simple exercises you can do, which will be very similar to Stone Killer. Let's say we're going to do 4 in the hand and then 4 in the foot, 8, 12, 16. You can do it heel down, you can do it heel up. Now I'm going to play with my toe. You can clearly do that with double bass drums as well, or just play between the feet. So when we start talking about the hi-hat, generally I'm going to play most of the time with my heel down. Depends on how far open you place the clutch. That's a pretty wide amount. If I'm playing jazz, I might play it that wide. If I'm playing rock and funk, I'm not going to probably play it that wide. So all you do is you kind of rest your foot on the footboard, heel down, a little bit of weight, and that's how you open and close it. You just lift your toe up and close it. So if I want to play, an open hi-hat note, that would be the length of an eighth note. If I want to play a quarter note, play shorter, it all depends on how long you want the opening to be. Generally, if I'm going to play 2 and 4, I will just do a slight rocking motion. So I'm playing time. So I kind of use that motion for the 2 and 4. If you're going to add in the stick, you can play the stick on the hi-hat with the tip. You can play it with the shaft. A lot of times I'll play it half open. Creates a pretty wide sound. So those are some considerations to think about when you're playing a hi-hat. Now I'd like to go really into some really basic rock grooves. I really seriously crowdsourced the input for this video, and I got so many beautiful suggestions, and a lot of people just said, really break it down to basics. If you're really intending this for non-drummers, let's go into the basics. So what I want to talk about right away is the balance of sound. When I'm going to play rock grooves, when I'm going to play funk grooves, there's going to be a totally different balance of sound within the different instruments in the instrument than when I'm going to play jazz or if I'm going to play a world rhythm. So if I'm going to play rock groove, where I'm really going to drive the beat is in the kick drum and in the snare drum. So those are going to be the prevalent parts, and those are going to be the louder instruments. And I'm going to play the hi-hat, I'm going to play it in balance to the other instruments, but really the snare drum and the bass drum, kick drum, however you want to refer to it, are where the time's going to be felt. So The most fundamental rock groove I can think of is 4 in the floor, which means 4 in a bass drum. So I'd start with 8th notes in the hi-hat. Four in the floor. That's kind of the place to start. The next place I would say maybe 1 and 3 in the bass drum, 2 and 4 in the snare drum. Boom, bap, boom, bap. Anytime I'm going to start varying the bass drum part, you know, what you can think about is start with the hi-hat, then you can add 2 and 4 in the snare drum. So those things are never going to change, and now your bass drum's just going to change. So I'm going to start with some, I don't know if I would call these permutations, but I'm just going to move the bass drum around in the measure. So first I'm going to start with 1 and 3, then I'm going to go 1 and 3, and start moving it around. So now what I want to do is I'm going to play the same beats, but I'm going to mark the form. I'm going to mark 4 bars every time on the crash cymbal, and I'm going to experiment with moving the ride part around on different instruments. Maybe I'll play it on the ride cymbal, maybe I'll half open the hi-hat, I could put it on the floor tom-tom. So same situation. I'll start with 1 and 3 and just get it moving. A text I often use with my students is called the Drumset Resource by Pete Sweeney. I have a earlier edition of it where it was called The Versatile Drummer. And what I like about the way Pete Sweeney does this is he starts very basic and he adds 1 note at a time to vary it. So I'm going to play on the section where he says 1 measure rock beats. I just want to show you a couple examples of how he varies these beats. And he uses a very interesting way of indicating the notation is a little bit different than you would see in most drum set parts, but it's really easy for a non-drummer to be able to see how all the parts line up. I'm going to talk more about that when we get into working on jazz coordination. So I'm going to start on the second line in this book, and you'll hear very quickly how he's just adding 1 note at a time. I find this method works really well with most of my students. Another book I use for beginning rock drummers is Carmen Apice's Realistic Rock, which Carmen has really laid out everything really clearly in there with lots of helpful hints about counting, etc. You know. The next thing that can become challenging if the first time you're starting to play grooves with the hi-hat and with the bass drum is placing the snare drum or the bass drum in between the hi-hat notes. I use a method where I generally add one note at a time. So I'm going to use another example from Pete's book. This section's Rock Beats with 16 Notes. What he's doing is he's adding the bass drum on the ah of 1 and the ah of 3. So what I would do is I would start with the hi-hat. I'm just going to move across the measure, adding one note at a time. You can also add the snare drum in between. And a lot of times you'll probably find a snare drum, you'll ghost it on these type of grooves. Otherwise the sound's going to be really cluttered right away. So I'm going to take one on the page 39 in that book. I'm going to take C. If I play it at this equal volume, also a cool groove, but you have to choose the option whether you want to have that other note have all that force or you want to kind of ghost it. Another great book for this is called The Breakbeat Bible by Mike Adamo. That's kind of the favorite book of many of my students for the last 10 years. And Mike has really broken all the different elements of playing funk drumming and hip-hop drumming, and including ghost notes and pull-out notes, control strokes, etc. So that's also a great resource you can check out. When we're going to talk about some really basic exercises you can do to start working on jazz coordination for yourself or with your students, I've started syncopation. I mean, I've been playing this book, I don't even want to say how many years, but I studied it with many different great drummers, great jazz drummers, and man, I can think of off the top of my head 30 or 40 different ways to play certain sections in the book. Where I would start would be on lesson 1. I would start with playing, jazz 4/4 time, walk the dog, walk the dog, walk the dog. Add 2 and 4 in the hi-hat. And here we're going to have a totally different balance of sound. The strong part is going to be in the ride cymbal and in the hi-hat. I'm going to feather the bass drum, and I'm hopefully going to get my stroke to be about the width of my pinky if I'm pretty focused. And I'm going to play, strong quarter note. If I play walk the dog, then the quarter note is strong here, and each quarter note is going to lead to the next quarter note. Play 2 and 4 in the hi-hat. I'm going to feather the bass drum, and then the top line is the snare drum. They're going to be very simple variations. So I'm just going to go through a couple of them. What I do with my students is I have them play 4 bars at a time without the accompaniment, then add the top line, do maybe number 1, then 4 bars, then time, no left hand, because I don't want them to develop like a cluttered sound in their ears for playing time. These type of simple exercises will help them to be able to do accompaniment, to comp, and also to set up figures. So I'm going to start really nice at a nice slow tempo. You can go through the book playing all of the pages pretty much on your left hand with jazz time. To kind of lead students to understand that, I often have my students work out of Jim Chapin's book, Advanced Technique, which I highly recommend. Again, another book I've been studying for decades, and every time I revisit it, I discover new ways to play it and new concepts, and I just hear it in a different way. What's great about Jim's book is he shows where the notes physically line up with the ride cymbal, which can be very helpful for some students. So same situation, I'm going to play the first section, a couple of exercises from the first section. I'm going to play maybe 2 bars at a time, just to shorten this up a bit, and then 2 bars that accompany it. And first I'll start with left hand again. One consideration you might want to think about is when you add another part to the ride cymbal and the hi-hat, feather in the bass drum, you do not want this part to affect the sound that you're creating on the other instruments. You don't want to make unintended accents. You want to make sure that everything stays even, no flamming, etc. What you can do right away is you can reverse that. We can ghost the chord notes on the snare drum, and then we're going to put the accompaniment in the bass drum. I find in each of the different sections in this book, the preliminary exercises are real straight ahead. Then when you start adding accents, it becomes much more challenging. The first half of the book, it's written like this, where you're dealing with, you can play it on the left hand, you can play it in your bass drum, and then the second half becomes much more conversational. A book that I would really be remiss if I did not mention John Riley's book, The Art of Bob Drumming. That is the go-to book when I have students who want to study jazz with me, especially when they've already gone through books like this. But to get them to the point where I can start to really get them into John's book, which is really the vocabulary is there. All the exercises are derived from, figures played by all the great jazz drummers. I usually tend to lead them through these books to get to that place first. Another book I like a lot that I've been studying is Vinny's book, which is a really great book if you really want to work on specific jazz vocabulary. So if you're going to go back to syncopation, there are just so many ways to do it, but a couple of nice variations right away. If you go into syncopation set 2, and I probably shouldn't assume anything, but if we have a figure that goes 1N, 2N, 3, and 4N, what I'm going to do is I'm going to swing the 8th note. So all the upbeats are going to fall on the 3rd note of the triplet. So if I go on 1, N, 2, N, 3, and 4, will become so first we can play jazz time again, walk the dog, spang-a-lang, D, D, D. And what you want to do is you want to find that way to create that ride cymbal sound. I'm going to feather the bass drum again, and then I'm going to play the left hand part. It's going to be the melody on the top line in syncopation set 2. Again, as in Jim Chapin's book, we can reverse that right away. cool variation right away is the long note, short note. So any note that's longer than an eighth note, you're going to voice with your bass drum. And any note that's, well, eighth note is going to be voiced on the snare drum. It's very interesting because it will kind of begin to help your students to start to hear how to set up figures. I could probably spend a couple of hours alone on the variations I know in this book. You could play the melody with your hi-hat. You could fill in with your left hand around the bass drum. I like to play it many times if I'm going to play quarter note triplets in a hi-hat. Sorry, that was a little bit of a rough demonstration, but I just wanted to put it out there. So those are some variations you can do with this book. I've created some other videos on how playing triplets in here, some coordinations if you're playing accents and triplets. Another great exercise, which is later in this book. Another thing I would like to talk about is I use books like Jim Chapin's book or any Carmen Apice or Pete Sweeney's book. I kind of treat those as vocabulary, and immediately I put all of my students into play-along books. Tony Igo's Groove Essentials are amazing. I like a book called Play-Alongs, I think Play-Alongs for the Drummer or Play-Alongs for the Drumset. I should have the title right, by Cristiano Michelizi. I really like that book. A lot of different styles, great play-along tracks, and really great explanations how to treat different sections, when to play the hi-hat, when to play the ride cymbal, etc. I also use a sequence called Sitting In with the Big Band, Volume 1 and Volume 2, and the Big Fat Band, of course, is a great resource to work on. There are many different resources out there, so these are just a few I want to throw out. When you're going to learn other rhythms, like let's say world rhythms, I'm going to take a bossa nova. They're going to become a little more challenging because you're playing different people's parts. It's not developed just on the drum set where there's like a snare drum part, a bass drum part, and a ride cymbal part. So if I take a bossa nova, I would start with the hi-hat part, then I would add the bass drum part, and then I would add cross stick. If I was moving up to ride cymbal, then you'd also have to add the 2 and 4 in the hi-hat. So let me just show you a simple way to develop a beat like a bossa nova. Same type of concept if I was playing a samba. Anytime I need to acquire a new groove like that, I start with the things that are staying the same. So people talk about that being what's static, and then see what's dynamic, and then start, improvising and varying from there. All right, I hope this video was helpful for you, and please support the Percussive Arts Society, and if you can, try to attend PASIC. PASIC is just an amazing event. I see so many wonderful colleagues there. You'll just see amazing performers, amazing master classes, instructionals. It's kind of a freak show. I've been playing drums since I'm 5, and every time I go there, it just blows my mind. So enjoy the rest of your summer. And summer's a great time to work on new skills. Definitely, if you can, put in a little more practice time, a little more pad time, a little more drum set time, and hopefully I'll see you out there someday, out in the drumland, drum universe. Groove on. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment area, and I will try to get back to you if I can. I can shoot a video or a short video. There are many playing examples of me playing with various groups in YouTube and playing in a number of different styles with really great musicians. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have a great rest of your summer. Karl Latham signing off. Thank you.